Hey, this is Ryan Jones for Serverless Guru. In this video, we're going to be talking about serverless and what this buzzword kind of means, right? So a lot of times you hear the word serverless and you may go, oh, how do I even define what these people are talking about? The way that I like to think about it is that you kind of have two camps. You have one camp where you have a virtual machine, like a server running, and that could be hosting your website. And then you have another side, which is the same website, but it's being hosted still on a server, but somebody else is managing it, right? So it's kind of this line where, like, are you managing the server or are you not managing the server? And no matter what, there is a server in the background, but serverless is basically this idea that you're taking advantage of fully managed services, that you're not actually having to, keep that like upfront cost and the overhead of managing it yourself. So, typically in a big company, if I was at Nike or at, some other gigantic company, they would have entire teams of people who their whole job is managing the infrastructure, right? So this would be like operations. They manage the production applications, they manage getting things to production, they manage the servers, all this stuff. And with serverless, you kind of offload that stuff to Amazon or to Google. And so what it can do is that it allows your front-end developers to turn into this like a hybrid developer where they're doing front-end and a little bit of back-end. And then your operations kind of gets cut a little bit down because you're able to offload that to Amazon. And so there's like three kind of extremes. The first extreme is that you're on the cloud and you're using a virtual machine. That's like, EC2, right? And that's, it's called Elastic Cloud Compute. And that's their service from AWS for this. And then you have Docker containers. So that would be something like ECS, which is Elastic Container Service. And that allows you to run Docker containers. It's a smaller version of a virtual machine, but you still have these servers running 24/7. You can have a little bit more fine tuning and turn them off and on using a service called AWS Fargate. And then you have the third more extreme example, which is Lambda functions. So this would be cloud functions, which allow you to only run and only be billed when people are actually requesting your stuff, right? So imagine it's 4 o'clock in the morning and you're running a website for crowdfunding and you have no traffic. Well, what ends up happening is that in the first example with the virtual machine, you're paid for that 24/7. It has to be running, otherwise your website's down. In the second example, you have Docker containers. It's running 24/7. And even if no one's requesting anything at 4 o'clock in the morning, you still have to have that running because otherwise your website's not going to run. And the third example is you have cloud functions or these fully managed services which allow you to be serverless. And in that point, your website to run is, extremely reduced. We're talking 70% reduced, 80% reduced for, TOC, for total cost, TCO, total cost of ownership. And then on top of that, when you abstract your backend and now you're using cloud functions, your functions literally don't run unless they are getting requested. And so then you're paying zero. So at 4 o'clock in the morning in the first example, maybe that whole night you didn't get any request, $30 for that server. In the second example, you're running Docker containers. Maybe it's a little bit smaller, so maybe it's $12, $15. And in the third example, it could be zero. So you scale that over $100,000 plus like bills from AWS and from other cloud providers, and then you look at something like this, and you think about the impact of abstracting a lot of that backend to things like serverless and Lambda, and immediately you're talking $70,000 in cost savings per month or more. And I've seen this I've been to a couple of like really big companies, and I've seen that they all have a similar problem, is that they basically took their old existing applications, they moved them to the cloud, they didn't refactor and optimize them, and they tried to keep the same processes that they had before. The cloud changes everything, and you can either do the cloud like you do, traditional software development, and you're not going to get that cost saving and that optimization, or you can make this deliberate effort to move to something like serverless and run like cloud native development, and that's where you're going to get cost savings, optimizations, all these other factors which don't get utilized and don't get realized unless you fully commit to this idea of throwing away a lot of the old stuff that you've done to then take advantage of what cloud services can do for you, right? It's a complete shift, and that's why there's a whole market and industry around what they call digital transformation, and that's basically taking a company that is not effective at what they're currently doing. They're not like lean. they're not doing things in an optimized way, and then basically showing them how to do that. That requires, like, from the CEO down to the developers, everybody has to be on board. And for our purposes, if you learn how to do serverless, then when these people are needing people to help implement this digital transformation, which they will, this whole thing that I'm talking about right now, when you see those 3 different tiers side by side, if you can achieve from $20 for one server down to $0 to $1, in one day, and you scale that over, hundreds of thousands of dollars in bills per month, every single company is going to be transitioning to serverless within the next 5 to 10 years. And they're already doing it now in a very small fashion, but they don't have the training and they don't have the expertise and the knowledge from all the hundreds and thousands of hours of working with these services. They hear the buzzword, they get excited, but they don't know how to actually implement it. So if you learn how to implement it, you're always going to have a job. And that's kind of the key behind why this course is being created. So that's what serverless means. That's why this course is important. Yeah, and this was Ryan Jones, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.